Part 60. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the flame demon lord. Author, Mocienu. Chapter 591. A huge tiger with black flames swirled out and bit down on Dark Crow's head with fierce ferocity. Dark Crow's body shook and narrowly avoided the attack, but his red robe had been torn off. How is it possible, haven't you already? When he saw the black-robed figure in front of him, Dark Crow's expression trembled and his body stiffened involuntarily. The existence that had disappeared for a whole 1,000 years actually appeared in front of him now. Looking at Dark Crow with an unbelievable face, Mewtwo raised a faint smile at the corner of his mouth. You are still as stupid as you were 1,000 years ago, Dark Crow. That's right, the alien demon general with a crow's head and a human body in front of him was the Dark Crow of Yugu, one of the 4 evils in the southern border of the 10,000 Beasts mountain range in the past. Mewtwo didn't find it strange that the other party would appear here. Because the other party has another identity, one of the 12 envoys of the alien source religion. Mewtwo. Yafanyan raised her heavy eyelids. The figure in front of her was so familiar. A crimson prajna mask hung around her waist, and a black tiger crouched under her body, just like 1,000 years ago. I didn't expect you to come back. Dark Crow's tone condensed, staring at Mewtwo's figure. But before he finished speaking, a terrifying energy wave suddenly burst out from his body, which was even more terrifying than the combined aura of the 6 generals of the alien demons. After 1,000 years of precipitation, Dark Crow was promoted from the destruction level to the source level. However, at the moment when this energy wave swept out, Dark Crow's body suddenly expanded and exploded, turning into countless black crows flying out. Although Dark Crow has been promoted to the source level, he still dares not confront the existence in front of him. Because this is the Lord of Eternal Night who stood on the top of the world at the end of the world 1,000 years ago. Even after 1,000 years, the power of the Lord of Eternal Night still left an indelible shadow in his heart. The moment he recognized Mewtwo, the Dark Crow had lost all his fighting spirit, and only one word echoed in his mind: escape. The Dark Crow that was promoted to Daiyuan was very fast. In a blink of an eye, countless crows had already flown in all directions. The speed was so fast that some humans were stunned. How could the alien demon general who was so aggressive just now be frightened by a single encounter? As the golden light released by the heavenly Deo slowly dissipated, the Dark Crows raged all over the sky. These crows are all clones of the Dark Crow. As long as one can escape, his original body can be resurrected infinitely and come back again. So many insects, it's really tricky. A wicked smile appeared at the corner of Mewtwo's mouth, and the ghost box on his chest glowed brightly. As a blood light emerged, a strange blood-colored longsword appeared in his hand. Mewtwo held the longsword in front of him horizontally, and a blood light shot up into the sky, instantly dyeing the sky above his head blood red. The people in Yuhei looked up and saw that the sky above their heads was like a river pouring down from the sky, instantly turning into a deep blood color. In the sky that looked like a blood river, a pair of ghost hands suddenly stretched out, and then a pair of blood souls uttered a shrill scream from the mouths of blood souls and emerged from the blood river. The blood souls in the sky quickly covered the fleeing black crows, and the shrill screams covered the crows' cries. The pairs of ghost hands caught the fleeing crows, bit and ate them, and the wronged souls in the sea of blood vented their anger on these crows. For a time, a large number of crow clones were torn apart by the blood souls. Although these clones were huge in number, their strength was less than 1/10,000th of the original body. Dark Crow knew that if it continued like this, its strength would soon be eroded bit by bit due to the destruction of its clones, so it gathered countless clones to reunite. Shua. In the midst of the blood soul's bite, the crows in the sky gathered layer by layer, and finally turned into a giant crow with a huge body. Mewed. With a deafening cry, all the humans on the ground felt a piercing pain in their eardrums, and some of the weaker ones were even injured in their souls and fainted directly. The giant dark crow waved its turbid wings and shattered the blood soul that was biting at it, and stared at Mewtwo with a pair of gloomy pupils. His careful planning was disrupted by Mewtwo's arrival, and even the clone made of flesh and blood was bitten by the blood soul, and his strength was gone by 9 out of 10. Now he only had one choice left, to fight to the death with Mewtwo in front of him. Mewed. Another long cry to the sky. The giant crow transformed by the dark crow has rushed towards Mewtwo, and the murderous aura that rushed into the sky instantly annihilated the blood souls around. At this moment, a large piece of thunder suddenly appeared in front of Mewtwo, and the black flame giant tiger under him leaped and tumbled to the center of the thunder. Under the blessing of thunder and fire, the body of the netherworld evil tiger continued to grow, and in a blink of an eye it had turned into a tens of meters high thunder and fire giant tiger, and the aura on its body continued to rise. Roar! Letting out a long howl, the netherworld evil tiger was wrapped in thunder and fire, and collided with the giant crow that rushed over. This blow made the dark crow, which was already severely injured, cry in pain, but Mewtwo's body shook and stood on the head of the dark crow. Holding the bloody demon knife, Mewtwo whispered in the ear of the dark crow, "I feel a familiar breath on you." That's right, the dark crow exudes a very familiar aura from Mewtwo, and that aura comes from the animal path. This dark crow is actually a peerless beast that escaped from the animal path. I saw Mewtwo insert the magic knife into the dark crow's neck, and the dark crow's body was hit hard again, and it fell down involuntarily. And below the dark crow fell, the space suddenly shattered, and a dark blue door emerged. When seeing the appearance of this door, the dark crow's pupils suddenly shrank. There was fear and pleading in his eyes, and his body struggled involuntarily. But Mewtwo suddenly pulled out the magic knife in his hand, and 1,000-pound gravity surged under his feet, instantly dropping the huge body of the giant crow into the portal of the animal path. With a flash of dim light, the gate of reincarnation in the void slowly closed, and Dark Crow returned to the painful reincarnation world again. As Dark Crow's body completely disappeared from this world, the humans below finally felt relieved and cheered in ecstasy again. Above the hall deep in the Jade Sea, two figures stared at the center of the battlefield with dull expressions. After a long while, the masked Yan turned his head hurriedly and exclaimed in disbelief. It turned out to be him. He is really back. Yan's voice was trembling. He had lived for countless years and rarely lost his composure like this. The red-robed figure beside him was silent for a moment, and slowly uttered a low voice. Yes, he is back, the biggest obstacle in our plan. Lord of the Eternal Night. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the Flame Demon Lord. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 592. In the central continent of the Eternal Night Dynasty, the capital of the Eternal Night. The sky above the huge royal city seemed dark, as if an indelible haze covered the sky. The Eternal Night clan was a royal family born in darkness, and the night was their real home. In the center of the Eternal Night royal city, stood an extremely magnificent palace. The palace was also a great tone. From a distance, it looked like a demon's head, baring its fangs to swallow the whole world. In the deepest part of the demon palace, the contemporary demon lord was sitting on the throne, and below him were several black figures in armor. One of the Ye clan members wearing armor stepped forward and knelt on one knee, saying respectfully, "Your Majesty, Lord Yesha will hold a night banquet for the prince's wedding in the royal city, and invites all the Owl Kings to watch the ceremony. I request that your Majesty come to the night banquet and bless the prince." As the general's voice fell, the hall fell into a brief silence. After a few breaths, the figure on the throne slowly said, "Since it is the descendants of Yesha who are holding a night banquet, I will participate. The Eternal Night royal family has a noble status and a high position. They have always attached great importance to weddings and sacrifices, not to mention that the objects of this wedding are the descendants of the two Owl Kings. This also means that the two princes will be married, So the highest ceremony of the eternal night dynasty is the night banquet to gather the princes from all directions. We welcome the arrival of the demon lord. The armored figure bowed and then left the quiet hall with his men behind him. The royal banquet, how many years have passed since I last saw it? The figure on the throne spoke faintly until the door of the hall was closed. High priest, what's going on with the human race's ancestral land? As the demon lord finished speaking, a red figure slowly walked out of the darkness beside him. This person was completely hidden under a red robe, revealing only a pair of somewhat crimson eyes. Report to the king, as I told you before, when the alien demon general led his troops to encircle and suppress Yuhei, he encountered the blood demon who killed the undead Owl King. The final result. Together with the 6 alien demon generals, the alien demon army was completely annihilated by the blood demon. If the words of the high priest were spread, it would be enough to shock the world. Each of the 6 alien demon generals is a top lord level powerhouse, and the 6 of them can even compete with the existence of the Owl King level. In addition to the tens of thousands of alien demon troops led by him, even the Owl King dared not easily provoke him. Who is this blood demon, and why is his strength so terrifying? Blood demon. The voice on the throne lowered a bit, and no joy or anger could be heard. Then, according to the priest, did the power of the 6 paths in the ancestral land of the human race also fall into the hands of the blood demon? The contemporary demon lord actually knows the reincarnation. What is the origin of this blood demon? Your Majesty, this blood demon appeared in the North Desert a few months ago. He first killed the Lord of the North Desert and then murdered the undead Owl King. He frequently appeared when the human race was in trouble. I suspect that this person is a hidden strongman from the ancestral land of Yuhei. The eyes of the high priest flashed, and no one could see what his expression was under the red hood. Yuhei, ancestral land. The demon lord on the throne slowly murmured the name of Yuhei. From the moment he chose to violate the old ancestral precepts, he knew that he would break the taboo of the Night Clan. As for the matter of the blood demon and the ancestral land of the human race, after the night banquet, we will send Yesha to lead the Yuyun cavalry to solve it. He would rather violate the ancestral teachings and bear the infamy of his life to end the current crisis. Finally, after a long sigh, the figure on the throne slowly stood up. The candlelight in the hall flickered, reflecting a solemn face with full features but slightly old. The man looked solemn, with long gray hair, wearing a dark black cloak, and dark purple skin that reflected his noble status. Half of his face was engraved with blood-colored patterns, and he was majestic without anger. He was the most authoritative existence in the world, the 9th generation of the Eternal Night Dynasty Demon Lord, Yejuyu. Yejuyu slowly turned his head and looked at the red-robed figure beside him. High Priest, how is the plan you mentioned going? The High Priest in red robe bowed slightly. Please rest assured, Your Majesty, everything is being implemented according to plan, and... The High Priest raised his head, and a deep red light flashed in his deep eyes. Besides, Your Majesty has seen the situation of this world. If you want to maintain the foundation established by your ancestors, everything we do. It's all for the salvation of this world. Yejuyu stared at the High Priest for a long time, and the latter still looked at him without flinching. After a while, Yejuyu nodded and looked at the front of the hall. The High Priest has assisted several generations of demon lords and served the Eternal Night Clan for hundreds of years. I trust him. The High Priest's words seemed to be mixed with a bit of smile. I will live up to the trust of the kings and bring true salvation to this world. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the flame demon lord. Author, Mo. Chapter 593. Dongxiao territory, deep in the ancestral land of Yuhei. The invasion of the alien demon army was tragic, directly causing the land on the edge of Yuhei to be destroyed and all living things to be destroyed. Countless elite warriors of the human race died in that war. There is no doubt that this caused another devastating blow to the already declining human race. Fortunately, in this war between humans and demons, the saint of the human race, Yefanyan, descended on the battlefield with a strong attitude. Like a female warrior who looked down on the world, combined with the power of heaven, she wiped out the alien demon army, which gave the remaining humans a chance to breathe. In the mountains behind Yuhei, Muqiu followed Yefanyan, who had just recovered from his injuries, and walked into the vast mountains and forests. During the whole process, the two did not communicate much, or they had their own thoughts. Yefanyan bit her lower lip lightly, feeling uneasy. Until now, she didn't know what Muqiu's purpose was, or even whether her choice was correct. Muqiu seemed to sense something, and cast his deep gaze into the depths of the forest. Finally, in the long silence, the two came to an extremely thick stone wall. The style of the stone wall was particularly simple, with complex and mottled patterns carved on it, which looked like some kind of ancient hieroglyphics, and surrounded by groups of endless flame totems, which looked mysterious and magical. This is the ancestral weapon treasure house of Yuhei, which hides the magic weapon treasures accumulated by the human race for generations. Yefanyan said as she stood in front of the stone wall. In the case of the scarcity of human aliens, it can be said that half of the human race's combat power is hidden in this treasure house. Muqiu nodded and looked at Yefanyan meaningfully. You seem to be very familiar with this place. Muqiu has only been in this world for half a year, but Yefanyan knows everything here very well, which can't help but make some associations in Muqiu's heart. Without saying anything more, Muqiu directly stretched out his hand and pressed it against the thick stone wall in front of him, and a piercing chill emanated. In an instant, a large piece of ice spread in Muqiu's palm, and the entire stone wall was frozen into an ice block in an instant. Crack! Then, Muqiu's palm exerted a little force, and the thick stone wall that had existed for thousands of years instantly cracked like a broken mirror. After a loud bang, a hole several meters high appeared in front of the two. Muqiu stepped into the mountain gate without hesitation, and Yefanyan behind him hesitated but followed closely. The space inside the stone wall is much larger than it looks from the outside world. It is more than 10 times larger than the outside world just by looking at it with the naked eye. Muqiu speculated that the space here was deliberately compressed by someone using some kind of space ability. The surrounding walls are inlaid with shining fluorite, and some magic weapons are placed on both sides, and some are directly inserted into the wall. Most of these magic soldiers are above blue. After thousands of years of accumulation, the human race has accumulated some trump cards. As the space of the cave becomes wider and wider, Muqiu even sees some modern weapons such as military guns. Until he saw several black steel monsters passing by, the dark barrels were covered with dust, and the tracks were also covered with thick rust. The mottled rust on the surface seemed to tell the erosion of time. Seeing this, Muqiu's expression changed slightly. These steel monsters seem to be bombers and tanks? I didn't expect that these high-tech products that have long been eliminated would also appear here. Muqiu once mentioned the decline of modern technology from Chi Xiaoxio's mouth. Now it seems that the ancestors of the human race still left these products of the times. If these tank weapons are used well, the destructive power is not less than that of a 9th-level magic general. It's a pity that the descendants now don't know how to operate these steel armor monsters. With a little emotion, Muqiu looked into the depths of the cave. There, he felt an extremely strong energy fluctuation. After a while, Muqiu and Yefanyan came to the deepest part of the cave. At this time, Yefanyan suddenly said, "The ancestral weapon treasury is the most mysterious place of the human race. Only the clan leaders of all generations can enter." Yefanyan looked at the depths of the cave lit by fluorite, and a puzzled look appeared on her face. 100 years later, in her era, even in the last second of the world's collapse, she had never seen what kind of existence was hidden in the depths of the cave. In front of the two of them, there was an extremely large diamond-shaped crystal floating. The four sides of the crystal were built with mechanically assembled platforms, and a stone tablet was set up next to the platform. Electromagnetic fluctuations were released from these mechanical platforms, driving the crystal to rotate slowly. On the ground below the crystal, a red energy crystal core was embedded, supporting the operation of the entire machine. And the energy fluctuations that Mu-Chiu felt before were released from that crystal core. This crystal core was emitting Dayuan-level energy fluctuations. Mu-Chiu stopped to watch and found that the entire device, including the crystal, was more like a large array altar. The aura released from this array was exactly the same as the space-time array set up on Liu Qinqin's bed. It's just that this mechanical altar was equipped with high-tech devices to enable the entire array to operate continuously. With the Dayuan-level crystal core providing energy continuously, this space-time magic array can run for hundreds or even thousands of years. Mu-Chiu walked forward and looked at the stone tablet next to the crystal. Something was engraved on the stone tablet with ancient hieroglyphics. Before Mu-Chiu fell into deep thought, a familiar voice came to his ears, explaining the words on the stone tablet to Mu-Chiu. When the universe was first created, a supreme being was born between heaven and earth. He was neither a god nor an immortal, neither a saint nor a demon, and he shuttled through the six paths. He can cross all realms, control life and death, control reincarnation, feed on the source of heaven and earth, infect all realms, and turn all creatures into monsters wherever he passes, so he is also called an evil demon. People call it burial. The scene around Mu-Chiu suddenly changed. He was in a white space in front of him, and everything around him was so illusory. Although the voice just now was familiar, it was not Yefanyan's voice. Mu-Chiu slowly turned around and saw a mysterious figure in a white robe floating in the air. His expression could not be seen clearly under the hood. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the flame demon lord. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 594. It's you. Mu-Chiu turned around, and the surroundings had turned into a white space, and a white-robed figure floated in the air in front of him. Mu-Chiu was quite familiar with this figure. It was the mysterious white-robed man he saw in the door of reincarnation that day. The other party first deliberately led him to the southern border, and then opened the door of reincarnation to let Mu-Chiu come to the world 1,000 years later. What exactly did he intend to do with this series of actions? Mu-Chiu narrowed his eyes. This time he could clearly feel the mysterious fluctuations emanating from the other party. It was the breath of time and space and reincarnation. What Mu-Chiu cared more about was the description of the white-robed man, the supreme who could make all the creatures in the world tremble. While thinking, he recalled the scene he and Yefanyan saw in the broken Wanling continent. That continent was eroded by terrifying power, and all the creatures in it turned into brutal demons, fighting and killing each other, and finally caused the extinction of creatures and the collapse of the world. Could this be the truth of the end of the world? Zhang feeds on the origin of the world, and all the creatures in the world infected by Zhang will be polluted by darkness and finally turn into ferocious monsters. What really brings the end of the world to this world is not the so-called infected virus, but the mutant energy eroded by the outside world. 6,000 years ago, the creatures of all realms could not bear the worry, and united the army of all realms to fight against the evil demons led by Zhang Zun, causing the reincarnation to change and the world to fall. In the end, under the joint efforts of countless great powers of heaven and earth, the evil demons were suppressed with the power of the 8 sources of Qinqin, Zhenli, Gan, Dui, Zhen, and Sun, and a world was formed as a cage for the evil demons, and the planes were exiled from the reincarnation, never ending. The white-robed man said in a calm tone that was enough to shock the outside world. According to what the white-robed man said, the entire world they were in was actually a shackle used to seal the evil demons. and the so-called 8 sources of creation are the key to open the cage. Even Mu Chiu's expression changed when he first heard the news. The world they live in is just a cage where the gods and immortals imprison the evil demons. Suddenly, he recalled that at the bottom of the valley lake, Lu Qinqin's father Lu Jins once said that the purpose of the heterogeneous religion is to collect the scattered 8 sources of creation in order to release a certain peerless evil. Could it be that this so-called peerless evil is the evil demon Zhang suppressed by this world? So this is the meaning of the existence of the heterogeneous religion. It is precisely because Mu Chiu successively robbed the source of Liwo, Duishui, and Kanyu, which seriously hindered the heterogeneous religion's plan, that he attracted the latter's crazy targeting. Mu Chiu looked up at the mysterious white-robed figure in front of him. The appearance of the dark crow shows that in the past 1,000 years, the existence of the heterogeneous religion has not disappeared, but is hiding in the dark waiting for an opportunity to move. The white-robed man told him everything at this time, obviously for another purpose. Is it to use him to stop the plan of the heterogeneous religion, or is there another plot? Thinking of this, Mu Chiu stared at the figure of the white-robed man with a deep gaze, and said calmly, "Knowing so many things, what role do you play in it? Or, who are you?" Mu Chiu's voice was low, but 2 doors with extremely ancient atmosphere appeared in front of him. One seemed to be a deep red blood cave, in which thousands of blood souls and evil ghosts were wailing and crying. The other was a dark blue underworld, in which countless monsters and monsters roared and howled. A deep crack suddenly appeared in the space in front of Mu Chiu, and a red-black longsword with supreme kingly power hovered. In an instant, an extremely terrifying breath spread from Mu Chiu's body, and the surrounding space collapsed inch by inch. Even the power of time and space could not restrain the powerful power of the kingly way and the 6 reincarnations. As the space vibrated, the figure of the man in white robe became blurred. Even the man in white robe with the power of time and space was affected by Wang Wei, and his voice became intermittent. "Soon, you will know." He vaguely felt that he had heard this voice somewhere before. But before he could recall, the scene around him rotated again, the white space gradually faded, and the figure of the man in white robe disappeared with it. In a blink of an eye, he had returned to the huge diamond-shaped crystal. "Mu Chiu." Yefanyan's hesitant voice came from behind him. He turned around slowly and saw Yefanyan in a long skirt looking at him with concern. Mu Chiu smiled and shook his head, and cast his eyes on the huge energy crystal core in front of him. Swish! At this moment, a bloodline suddenly shot out from the air, so fast that it even cut the surrounding space, and it was only a few inches away from Mu Chiu's eyebrows in the flash. "Be careful," Yefanyan exclaimed. At the critical moment, Mu Chiu raised his hand and grabbed the blood-colored thread that was enough to cut through space with his bare hands. A ball of black flame suddenly burst out from Mu Chiu's hand, and the burning black flame instantly burned the blood thread into ashes. Mu Chiu turned around expressionlessly, and saw a red-robed figure standing on the rock on the other side of the cave. Yefanyan, who was standing behind Mu Chiu, was shocked when she saw the red-robed figure. Clan leader. The figure who suddenly appeared was hunched, wearing a red robe, and a mask engraved with flame patterns on his face. It was the contemporary clan leader of the human race, Yan. "There is a familiar aura about you." Mu Chiu's eyes flashed, and a ball of black flames burst out when he raised his hand, and in an instant, Yan's body was pierced. Surprisingly, Yan's body was not swallowed by the black flames at the moment of being pierced, but turned into a pool of water mist and slowly dissipated. It's really as sharp as ever, our Lord of Eternal Night." A laughing voice echoed in the cave, and on the rocks on the other side, bloodlines overlapped and turned into a figure in a red robe again. Still wearing the red robe, but unlike before, Yan's figure is no longer hunched, and the mask on his face has changed from a fire pattern to a funny clown. When the figure of the clown appeared in the distance, Mu Chiu looked at the pool of water mist in front of him, his face changed, and he said word by word. Mirror, flower, water, moon. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the flame demon lord. Author, MOCNU. Chapter 595. Mirror, flower, water, moon. Muchu's eyes flashed with a gleam of brilliance, and he turned to look at the red-robed figure on the distant rock. Under the familiar robe, there was a clown mask with a smile on his face. Heterogeneous Church. From the moment Dark Crow appeared in front of the demon general, Muchu knew that the heterogeneous church had not yet disappeared, but was hiding in the dark waiting for an opportunity to move. But no one could have imagined that the heterogeneous church had actually infiltrated the upper echelons of the human race, and even became the supreme leader of the contemporary human race, the patriarch of the human race. Muchu narrowed his eyes. He had seen the ability used by the red-robed clown just now. He looked directly at the clown's smiling face and said calmly, "Mirror, flower, water, moon, so it's you. Xiao Yuntian." The clown was originally emitting a creepy sinister laugh, but when he heard Muchu's name, his voice stopped. "You actually figured it out, after so many years. I didn't expect you to still remember." The clown slowly took off the mask on his face, and under the funny mask was a handsome man's face. "Xiao Yuntian, why is it you?" Yefanyan, who was standing behind Muchu, was shocked. The handsome man in front of her was the second son of the Xiao family in Yungxiao City, the human base in the end times where she was, Xiao Yuntian. But at this time, Xiao Yuntian's face was no longer that handsome smile, but a bit more weird and gloomy. Unlike his brother Xiao Yunyi's arrogance, Xiao Yuntian's reputation has always been that of a righteous man and a warm and kind person. Yefanyan never thought that such a familiar face was hidden under the clown's mask. "I didn't expect you to still remember me. How are you, first-generation demon lord?" Xiao Yuntian stared at Muchu's figure, and the corners of his mouth curled up a weird degree, as if it was the funny smile on the clown's mask. "The ability of mirror, flower and water moon is rare even now, so I will not forget it." Muchu's eyes did not show much surprise, and he replied calmly. He even wanted to devour Xiao Yuntian and take the ability of mirror, flower and water moon for himself, and of course he would not forget the special ability of replicating life. What is surprising is that even after 1,000 years, Xiao Yuntian's appearance has not aged at all, only his expression has become more vicissitudes after 1,000 years of precipitation. "It's really as annoying as always." Muchu's calm reaction made Xiao Yuntian feel annoyed, and a gloomy smile appeared on his face. "We are all curious, how much has the mysterious demon lord improved his strength in this missing 1,000 years?" As his voice fell, a mirror-like water curtain suddenly appeared in front of him, and the smooth water surface was surrounded by mist, reflecting Muchu's figure. The next second, a sinister smile appeared on the face of Muchu in the water curtain. He looked at himself in the mirror and stepped out of the water curtain. Mirror, flower and water moon, as the top supernatural power in the end times, can replicate the existence reflected by the mirror-like water curtain. Although the replica has a short life and its strength has declined compared to the original body, it is still an extremely powerful ability. As the replica Muchu walked out of the water curtain, looking at the familiar self in front of him, Muchu's face did not fluctuate. The former had a sinister smile in his eyes, while the original body's face was always indifferent. I saw that Muchu suddenly burst out with black flames all over his body, and he rushed towards the original body with raging flames all over his body. The fierce flames seemed to have turned into a giant python, and the space was burned by the heat waves wherever it passed, and it collapsed inch by inch. Facing the surging black flames, Muchu shook his head. A low-quality imitation will never be accepted by the public. WWW. A bloody light shot out from his hand, and turned into a blood-wrapped scarlet demon sword in Muchu's hand. As another Muchu rushed over with a raging flame, the demon sword in Muchu's hand suddenly burst into a gorgeous bloody light. A blood-red streak passed through the sky, and a blood mark appeared on the forehead of Mu Qiu, who was wrapped in flames. Immediately afterwards, the blood mark continued to spread from the forehead to the body, and the flames wrapped around his body also stopped. The expression on Mu Qiu's face solidified in an instant, and an incredible look flashed in his eyes. The next moment, along with the diffuse flames, this replica completely exploded into a pool of water mist. The replica made by the mirror flower and water moon is still different from the original, not to mention that the object it copied is a Daoyuan level existence. The biggest difference between this replica and the original is that it lacks its own Daoyuan, so he will never reach the Daoyuan level realm. For Mu Qiu now, existences below the Daoyuan level are all ants. If 1,000 years of experience has only allowed you to grow to this point, it really disappoints me. Mu Qiu looked at Xiao Yuntian standing on the rock and suddenly laughed. The haze on Xiao Yuntian's face became deeper and deeper, and a water curtain suddenly appeared in front of him. But this time, the water curtain in the mirror reflected Xiao Yuntian's own figure. But unlike the gloomy face of his original body, Xiao Yuntian in the water curtain was full of laughter. He, how can you be so careless to our respected demon lord? I saw Xiao Yuntian slowly stepping out of the water curtain, but the real person actually walked into the deep water curtain. This is our first meeting, Lord Demon. Xiao Yuntian walked out of the water curtain with an even crazier look on his face. He opened his mouth in an unimaginable arc and looked directly at Mu Qiu's face with a smile on his face. Mu Qiu could clearly feel that the mental state of this clone was significantly different from that of the original body, and even the soul fluctuations emanating from the body were different. He is not Xiao Yuntian. In other words, the crazy-looking man in front of him is not the Xiao Yuntian he knows. This Xiao Yuntian actually has a dual personality. I hope you can cheer me up a bit. Mu Qiu shook her arm, but the context was completely unchanged. Of course, I must satisfy our demon lord. Xiao Yuntian looked crazy, and suddenly opened his hands from his robe, and countless lines of blood shot out from his body. Blood lines shot into the water curtains behind him, as if involving some existence. The next second, figures in black robes slowly stepped out of the water curtain. Waves of extremely terrifying energy fluctuations emanated from these figures, and the entire space began to tremble slightly. These are clearly destructive level experts. Come see an old friend. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the flame demon lord. Author, MOCNU. Chapter 596. Now let's meet our old friend. As Xiao Yuntian's crazy laughter fell, he swung his arms violently, and countless bloodlines vibrated under his involvement. In an instant, a group of water curtains emerged in the area around Mu Qiu, and dense black figures stepped out of the water curtains to surround Mu Qiu. At this moment, those black-robed figures involved in the bloodlines all moved and attacked in the direction of Mu Qiu. In an instant, countless pure murderous intentions were locked on Mu Qiu, followed by extremely powerful energy fluctuations. Mu Qiu moved slightly to avoid the sneak attacks of several figures, and the scorching flames burst out from his body to repel the surrounding black-robed figures. But suddenly, the ground under Mu Qiu's feet collapsed suddenly, and the cracks were like the ferocious mouth of a demon, trying to fall Mu Qiu into the bottomless abyss. A rising flame appeared beside Mu Qiu, and his arms were wrapped in surging black flames, which instantly penetrated the bodies of several figures. Only then did Mu Qiu stop and turn his head to look at a corner behind him. There was also a black-robed figure standing there, but his figure looked a little hunched, holding a pair of crutches in his hands, and the ground under his feet collapsed inch by inch when he raised his hands. When the flames burst out by Mu Qiu were mixed with strong wind pressure, the hood of the black-robed man was lifted, revealing the face of a vicissitudes of life. When seeing this face, Ye Fanyan couldn't help but exclaimed, "Lu, Uncle Lu. Although his face became vicissitudes of life, Yefenyan still recognized at a glance that the old man in front of him was the leader of the former Qingyang base and the initiator of the Battle of the Beast Nest Lu Jinchang. But now Lu Jinchang has lost his former imposing manner, his body is hunched, his skin is wrinkled, and even his eyes are empty and indifferent. Is it you? Mu Qiu also recognized Lu Jinchang's identity. At the beginning, Lu Qinqin's father Lu Jins told Mu Qiu that the two brothers of the Lu family had been controlled by the alien religion and became members of the 12 sacrificial immortals. And Lu Jin suddenly realized because of Lu Qinqin's appearance and forcibly got rid of the control of the alien religion, but he was also hunted down by the alien religion and was finally imprisoned at the bottom of the valley lake. Lu Jinchang has been controlled by the alien religion, and finally launched the Beast Nest War in order to get the source of Kanyu on Su Wen. Mu Qiu once wondered what ability the other party had to flexibly control several destructive level strongmen, but now he has seen some clues. Be careful. Yefenyan reminded Mu Qiu, and then drew the holy sword to chop at the black-robed figure beside him. Mu Qiu had already sensed it, and almost at the moment when Yefenyan finished speaking, he raised his hand to block the fist that broke through the air. Then, with a raised hand, Mu Qiu threw the entire body that was rushing towards him into the air. There was a loud bang, and the huge body instantly embedded in the rocks in the distance. After a long while, a golden giant with golden light all over his body slowly walked out of the collapsed rocks. The golden body was flowing with blood like a spring, but the expression on his face was always numb. When Yefenyan saw the face of the golden man, he exclaimed again, Tianlai Novel Network. Is it Shi Haoshan, the lord of the giant rock fortress? When the flames erupting around Mu Qiu became more and more intense, the names that were familiar to him in the end times came out of Yefenyan's mouth. Xiao Yunfan, the head of the Xiao family in Yungziao City, Taoist Lucien, the leader of the Zhulu base, the guardian of the Zikan base. The look in Yefenyan's eyes became more and more horrified. The real identities hidden under these black robes were all the leaders of the base guards in the end times. They were all destructive level strongmen who dominated one side 1,000 years ago. But now these heroes in the end times are standing in place like puppets, with empty eyes, numb expressions, and a dark eyeball. It seems that you have already planned it? Mu Qiu's eyes swept through these indifferent faces one by one, with a calm expression. If you look closely, you can find that these people are all connected by thin red bloodlines like hair. These powerful human beings have long died, and what is in front of them now is just a puppet controlled by the bloodline. Now Mu Qiu finally understood why the human race declined so quickly. It turned out that thousands of years ago, the alien cult had been secretly hunting these powerful human beings and making their corpses into puppets. This directly caused the human race's bloodline and inheritance to be interrupted, which led to the decline of the human race in later generations. Come and meet our old friend. Xiao Yuntian opened his eyes wide, with a crazy smile in his eyes, and his hands wrapped in bloodlines pulled ferociously, and the figures controlled by the bloodlines also shook. I saw a trace of light in the empty eyes of these puppets, as if they had their own consciousness and pulled out the magic weapons embedded in the wall around them, and the destructive energy fluctuations burst out from their bodies. At this moment, they seemed to have turned into the overlords who dominated one side in the end of the world, and all kinds of strange superpowers emerged in an endless stream. Any of these powerful human beings would be a powerful existence that could crush a lord in the outside world. And Xiao Yuntian has hundreds of such powerful people under his command. Is this your trump card? Mu Qiu looked at the hundreds of destruction-level powerful people who surrounded the two of them with a calm expression. What they are facing now is the top powerhouse in all the apocalypses 1,000 years ago. Mu Qiu raised his hand slightly, and a simple and ancient gate surrounded by clouds and mist appeared in his palm. 6 dragon-like chains were wrapped around the gate, 2 of which were broken, showing blood red and dark blue respectively. 2 phantoms suddenly shot out from the gate, turning into 2 gates, one red and one blue, and appeared in front of Mu-Chiu. When the two gates appeared, the surrounding space began to vibrate wildly, and even the barrier in the cave began to shake. What is this? On the rocks in the distance, feeling the breath emanating from the two gates, Xiao Yuntian's face showed an emotion called fear for the first time. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the flame demon lord. Author, MOCNU. Chapter 597. As the red and blue doors appeared in front of Mu-Chiu, the surrounding barrier space began to tremble uncontrollably. In a blur, the wails of ghosts and the roars of beasts came from the ancient gate. Time and space seemed to freeze at this moment, and the figures of the rushing puppets also became frozen at this moment. Immediately afterwards, a blood-curdling wailing sounded from far to near, and blood-colored dead souls suddenly floated out of the bloody door, rushing out in all directions with their teeth and claws bared. On the other side, the blue door suddenly expanded, and countless huge, deformed beasts rushed out of the door, launching ferocious attacks on the surrounding puppets. In an instant, the puppets originally surrounded by Mu-Chiu and the two men fell into the trap of countless blood souls and ferocious beasts. More and more blood souls and strange beasts are coming out of the hungry ghost path and the animal path. Perhaps their individual strength is not as good as these destructive level powerhouses. But there were countless of these six-path monsters, fearless of life and death, swarming forward, opening their ferocious teeth and claws, biting or gnawing, using the most primitive posture to tear into pieces and erode the flesh in front of them. In just a few moments, dozens of manipulated puppets were annihilated in the swarm of blood souls and alien beasts. Even though the predecessors of these puppets were all destructive powerhouses who dominated one side in the apocalypse, they were no match for countless blood soul beasts, and the situation reversed in an instant. The old-looking Lu Jinchang had one of his arms torn apart by an evil spirit, but even with such a dull face, there was still no sign of pain. I saw him pushing the scepter in his hand, and as the scepter touched the ground, there was a loud sound like a landslide from the ground under his feet. The thick earth cracked like a broken mirror in the blink of an eye, and countless strange beasts fell wherever the deep cracks passed, not knowing whether they were alive or dead. As early as the end of the world, Lu Jinchang was a destructive powerhouse with the reputation of destroying cities and protecting mountains. He was also responsible for the source of Shanzhen, one of the 8 sources of creation. He and his younger brother Lu Jin suppressed the southern border and were known as the twins by the world. The existence of male. Now that 1,000 years have passed, the strength of Lu Jinchang, who was made into a puppet, has not declined. He killed hundreds of ferocious beasts with just a raise of his hand. Lu Jinchang looked dull and was about to wave his arms to start another large-scale earthquake, but suddenly a bloody light flashed in front of him. People should still obey their elders, General Lu. Mu-Chiu's understated voice came, and along with a line of blood, Lu Jinchang's only intact arm was cut off. The demon sword flashed with crimson light, and it penetrated into the old man's chest in an instant. The vitality in Lu Jinchang's body was quickly stripped away, and even the blood thread wrapped around him withered and fell off. Until the last moment of his life, Lu Jinchang's eyes finally burst out with a touch of humanity. The old man slowly looked at Mu-Chiu. In addition to gratitude, there was also strong regret and a trace of relief in his cloudy eyes. Bang! As the empty shell of the puppet body fell, the hero who used to guard southern Xinjiang and protect millions of human beings also left this world. On the other side, the puppets controlled by the bloodline gradually turned into wreckage under the siege of countless blood souls and alien beasts. This power. That kind of passage. And the initiator of all this, Xiao Yuntian, who had a clown face, looked shocked at the moment. He covered his head in disbelief, his eyes couldn't stop beating wildly, and his eyes repeatedly turned around the 2 gates of reincarnation and Mu-Chiu. How is it possible, that it really is? Xiao Yuntian murmured in disbelief, and then seemed to react. That's right, we should have thought of it earlier, otherwise we wouldn't have. In the barrier of the cave, after cleaning up the last old friend who turned into a puppet, Miu withdrew the demon knife in her hand and looked up at Xiao Yuntian, who was standing on the rock looking like a madman. If this is your final trump card, it's really disappointing. Xiao Yuntian seemed to have just stepped out of his own world, and he did not feel sorry at all that the puppet toys he had collected for thousands of years were destroyed. The look in Miu's eyes changed for the first time, and that strange smile appeared on his face again. I didn't expect that you gave me a big gift during this meeting. But this is good, it saves us some trouble. The game is not over yet. One day you will meet our first-generation demon lord. Xiao Yuntian said some strange words incomprehensibly, and the expression on his face was particularly strange. Suddenly, as the words fell, his body exploded into a pool of water mist out of thin air, and there was no trace at all. Flowers in the mirror, moon in water, it's really the consistent style of the heterogeneous religion. Miu looked at the position where Xiao Yuntian exploded and made no move. What appears here is just a clone created by Xiao Yuntian using the mirror, flower, water, and moon, and his true body has never appeared. Miu, what exactly is going on? Yefenyan also put away the golden holy sword and walked to Miu with a confused look on her face. Miu shook her head but did not speak. She turned around and walked to the huge prism in the center of the barrier. At this time, the cave barrier had been wiped out in the fierce battle, and the ground under his feet also had abyss-like cracks. Standing in the same place, he could even see the deep mountains in the distance. Miu placed his hand in front of the huge crystal, slowly closed his eyes, and felt the extremely majestic time and space energy in it. When he opened his eyes again, a beam of light flashed in his blood-red eyes, and he chuckled. So, you are here. Just as the battle in the cave barrier was in full swing, the various continents outside seemed to be exploding, like boiling water chattering. All forces were ready to move, and there was an uproar. The reason for all this came from a piece of news. The prince of the night demon Owl King, one of the 12 Owl Kings, was about to marry the daughter of the Chaos Beast Owl King, and held a night banquet in the royal city to entertain the Owl Kings of all parties. Warm reminder, if you find that clicking the next page will force you to jump to other websites, please use the chapter error or contact us at the bottom to inform us, we will handle it as soon as possible, thank you for your understanding. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the flame demon lord. Author, MOCNU. Chapter 598. The marriage between the eldest son of the Night Fierce King and the beloved daughter of the Chaotic Beast King suddenly became the focus of heated discussion in the entire Yanjai dynasty. This not only represents the marriage of two aristocratic families, but also the alliance of two powerful kings. You must know that the Night Fury King is a relative of the current Demon Lord and a well-deserved descendant of the royal family. This marriage is nothing more than a closer connection between the power of the Chaotic Beast King and the royal family. There are also forces who speculate whether the royal family intends to curb the power of the Xiao Wang. After all, the current Xiao Wang is like a prince in ancient times. As his power grows day by day, the sky is high and the emperor is far away. Local troops are not even under the jurisdiction of the royal family. Therefore, despite this seemingly simple marriage banquet, many forces have already made plans secretly. The clouds are treacherous and have hidden mysteries. At the same time, it is located somewhere in a deep and lonely valley. Roar. Suddenly, a shocking beast roar came from deep in the valley. The deafening roar penetrated the canyon, and the frightened birds and beasts flew away. In the depths of the canyon, an extremely huge two-headed lion slowly stepped out of the cave, its eyes full of ferocity and blood. In front of the two-headed giant lion, there was a group of orcs dressed as guards, holding various magic weapons, and looking frightened. "Master, be careful." Along with the roar of the giant lion, some low-strength alien orcs fainted directly, and the surviving orcs also looked frightened. "It's coming, Hurry, run quickly. Some of the guards who could not withstand the tremendous pressure dropped their weapons and ran toward the back of the valley. Master, let's get out of here quickly. An orc with a goat's head was dressed like a butler, wearing an old suit, and beside him was a young man wearing leather armor. The boy looked to be only about 20 years old. The leather armor on his body was made of the fur of an unknown monster, and he looked quite domineering. Although the boy's face and body shape are very similar to those of humans, there are several feline whiskers on his face and a pair of animal ears on the top of his head. The goat steward urged the young man to escape, but the young man was already frightened by the mighty roar of the lion, so that his legs and feet became weak and his body became stiff. The guards around him kept running towards the rear. At this time, the two-headed demon lion was getting closer and closer to them. A few guards bravely stepped forward to attack the demon lion, waving the demon soldiers in their hands to attack the demon lion. The specially made magic weapon struck the hard skin of the two-headed giant lion and made a sound of gold and iron, without even penetrating the flesh. The demon lion looked at the ants beneath him with a humanistic look, and with a swing of its limbs, it flew several incoming guards into the rocks nearby. The remaining guards were even more frightened when they saw this, and completely lost the desire to fight with him. Master, let's go quickly. The goat steward looked anxious and pulled the young man beside him to escape. But the young man suddenly stood up and looked at the two-headed demon lion. His trembling eyes gradually became firm. I am the young master of the Lynx clan, how could I escape from battle? As he spoke, streaks of magic energy emitted from the young man's body, and his body gradually changed. Brown hair began to grow on his body doubled in height, feline patterns appeared on his face, and his eyes turned into vertical pupils. The young man pulled out a heavy long sword from his back, and in one leap he appeared 10 meters away. The boy shouted loudly and launched a fierce attack on the giant lion's body. The huge heavy sword looked extremely light in the young man's hands. There was a sound of breaking through the air when he swung it, and there were arcs of electricity flashing on the sword. In the blink of an eye, the boy turned into a galloping electric current that was constantly moving on the giant lion's body, and the latter also let out a low groan. There was another roar, and the ferocious momentum bounced the young man away from the giant lion. The two-headed giant lion was obviously angered by the young man this time, and its 4 eyes looked at the young man with full of anger. Roar! With one swoop, the huge shadow of the giant lion's body had already covered the young man's head. One man and one lion took turns fighting fiercely in the valley, but in just a moment, the young man holding the heavy sword was beaten back steadily. The boy was obviously no match for the giant lion, and his forcibly grown body continued to shrink at a speed visible to the naked eye. When the heavy sword collided with the giant claw of the demon lion, the two figures, one large and one small, each retreated hundreds of meters. The two-headed lion licked the wound between its buttocks, but it didn't appear to be seriously injured at all. However, the young man's soaring figure has gradually subsided. He was breathing heavily with his heavy sword, and his chest was constantly rising and falling, which was a huge consumption. Master! Upon seeing this, the goat steward quickly wanted to step forward to help, but was stopped by the sword-wielding boy. Don't come over, I will solve it myself. As soon as the young man finished speaking, he seemed to feel something and looked up suddenly. I saw a black figure suddenly falling from the cliff above my head from far to near. The figure continued to enlarge in the young man's pupils, and crashed onto the ground where the two-headed giant lion was not far away. Boom! Like a meteorite falling, a huge hole was instantly blasted into the ground, and sand and dust flew everywhere. The young man hurriedly covered his eyes and lowered his head. After a few breaths, the smoke and dust dissipated, and the young man slowly raised his head. Amidst the smoke and dust, a black figure slowly walked out in front of him. It was a man with a human face, handsome, and looked about 20 years old. The man was wearing a black windbreaker, with a faint smile on his face, and a black cat in his arms was licking its fur boredly. and behind the man, there lay the corpse of a giant beast with its head torn apart. Tianlai Novel Network. Do you know how to get to the direction of the royal city? The corner of the man's mouth curled up, and his magnetic and soft voice echoed in everyone's ears. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the flame demon lord. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 599. In a dark world shrouded by dark clouds, a particularly spectacular castle stands under the clouds. The gorgeous castle is filled with patrolling guards wearing heavy armor, and the fierce roar of some ferocious beast can be heard from deep underground in the castle. In a room on the highest floor of the castle, a girl with animal ears wearing a red wedding dress was looking at herself in the mirror. Chi Xiao is very distressed now. She looked at the bright makeup on her face and the gorgeous clothes on her body, but the expression on her face became more and more sad. No girl doesn't love beauty. But since she was caught here, she has put on the most exquisite clothes and eaten delicacies rarely seen in the world. The food, clothing, housing, and transportation were obviously extremely luxurious, but Chi Xiaoxiu's heart had sunk to the bottom. Because she knew the price to pay behind all this enjoyment. She only appeared here as a victim of the political marriage between the two owl kings. With the purpose of avenging his mother and escaping his fate, Chi Xiaoxiu fled from his original family to Bomo, and finally became a disciple under Mu Chiu's sect. The best result is that she has greatly improved her strength under the guidance of Mu Chiu, the master, and returned to the family to annul the engagement and stage a 30 years in Hedong, 30 years in Hexi, don't bully young people into poverty. But she never expected that she would be captured and returned to the other party's territory before she could return from her studies. Now she is under heavy surveillance, and she has no chance to escape because she is not good at academics. Chi Xiaoxiu didn't expect Mu Chiu to step forward to rescue after learning the news. After all, the enemies she would face this time were the two owl kings and even the entire Yanjai royal family. Even though Mu Chiu's strength could rival or even surpass King Xiao in Chi Xiaoxiu's mind, the strength of a human being was still too low in front of the entire royal family. But the girl still didn't think about giving up. Staring at herself in the mirror, Chi Xiaoxiu mustered up her energy and waved her fists twice. Then, she magically took out a knife and fork from her arms that had been sharpened to an extremely sharp edge. After being captured, all the space bracelets and magic weapons on her body were confiscated, and now she can only use local materials. Chi Xiaoxiu looked at the closed door and tiptoed behind the bed cabinet. With a slight movement, she pried open a gap the size of a bowl in the wall behind the bed cabinet. Rustle. Chi Xiaoxiu picked up the knife and fork and carefully moved it along the edge of the gap. Stripes of blue-black stone foam were soon worn away from the hard wall. Chi Xiaoxiu looked at the increasingly open gap in front of him, and a look of joy gradually appeared on his face. However, at this moment, there was a sudden sound of staggered footsteps in the corridor outside the door. Bang! The door to the closed room was pushed open from the outside, and a man in a tuxedo pushed in carrying hot food. This man had dark purple skin, a devil-like horn on his head, and his eyes were faintly glowing blood red. When the man walked into the room, he saw Chi Xiaoxiu sitting on the corner of the bed with a melancholy look on his face, his expression gloomy, and there was no hope in his eyes. What's wrong with Xiaoxiu? Are you sitting here feeling unhappy? Yesikong tried his best to make his cold appearance look softer, and walked to Chi Xiaoxiu with a stiff smile on his face. Yesikong put the food on the table nearby. He keenly noticed that there was a row of fine beads of sweat on Chi Xiaoxiu's forehead, and even his chest was rising and falling abnormally. Are you sick? Yesikong raised his hand, as if he wanted to touch Chi Xiaoxiu's forehead, but the latter ducked away. Chi Xiaoxiu blinked and said dryly, No, no. It's just a little hot in here and I'm just sweating a little. Seeing Qi Xiaoxiao looking at him with a sincere expression, Ye Sikong was uncharacteristically not annoyed, and nodded. In that case, let's change rooms. As soon as he finished speaking, the expression on Qi Xiaoxiao's face suddenly became stiff. I can't let my bride be wronged in the slightest. Ye Sikong's eyes flashed red, and a charming smile appeared on his face. Seemingly not noticing the strange expression on Qi Xiaoxiao's face, Ye Sikong turned and walked towards the door. Recuperate well, our wedding will be held under the witness of the entire dynasty. As the sound of the door closing sounded, Qi Xiaoxiao's figure was still frozen in place like a piece of wood. Click. The knife and fork in his hand fell to the ground. Qi Xiaoxiao opened his mouth and murmured, "It's over, it's all over." The candle light flickered in the dark corridor, and a guard wearing armor quickly came to Ye Sikong, knelt down on one knee and said, "Your Highness, Prince Qi, there is no trace of the blood demon yet." Blood demon. Ye Sikong stopped, the smile on his face completely disappeared, and his face was filled with arrogance and indifference. He still has not forgotten the scene he saw in the northern desert. Qi Xiaoxiao's human master defeated an army of tens of thousands, including the northern desert lords, in a few breaths, and even frightened him into fleeing. Ye Sikong clenched his fists. He would never allow other human men to appear next to Qi Xiaoxiao. Use Yuyankai's men and horses to search for this person's whereabouts within the surrounding continent. No matter life or death. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the flame demon lord. Author, MOCNU. Chapter 600. Ta-ta-ta-dash. In the quiet mountain forest, the sound of horse hooves suddenly sounded in an orderly manner. I saw a convoy speeding along the dense mountain forest full of bushes. Looking carefully, this team looks extremely weird. At the front is a carriage driving a unicorn monster. The carriage is obviously carefully decorated with gold and silver patterns. Behind the carriage, there followed a group of escorts composed of dozens of figures. These guards were wearing non-uniform uniforms. Some of the guards' outfits even looked a little inferior and shabby, but their faces were all orcs. There was a burst of laughter from the carriage at the front of the motorcade. "Brother Mew, you must also be going to the Royal City night banquet, right? Don't worry, follow us until we get to the Royal City, I'll make sure you enjoy the spicy food." A boy with animal ears and a pattern on his face sat on the carriage and grinned, completely forgetting that he had experienced a life and death crisis not long ago. My Lynx clan has been married to the Chaos Beast King. If I really think about it, the Chaotic Beast King would have to call me brother-in-law. The young man puffed up his chest and mentioned his family, his face full of pride. Beside the boy, Mu Qiu, who was also sitting in the carriage, was teasing the black cat in her arms, smiling and saying nothing. This group of orcs was rescued by Mu Qiu from the valley. It just so happened that the other party's purpose was to go to the royal city to attend the Yanjai dynasty's night banquet, so Mu Qiu naturally took a ride. This beast-eared boy is called Rog, and he is the contemporary young master of the Lynx clan. This time, he was invited to attend the night banquet in the royal city on behalf of the Lynx clan. The Lynx clan is one of the 72 beast realms under the command of the chaotic beast Owl King. It is said that the ancestors have also given birth to existences of the Owl King level. They have a long history and have a certain say in the entire beast clan. Of course, Mu Qiu heard all of this from Rog himself, and the authenticity of it remains to be tested. Rog was particularly talkative in front of Mu Qiu, his savior, and his words were full of pride for the Bobcat clan. Although Mu Qiu looked like a human, Rog did not think deeply about it. In the wilderness beast realm where he was, there were also many monsters that looked like humans, but turned into powerful monsters after their transformation. The goat steward who was also sitting next to Rog opened his mouth, as if he wanted to stop his young master from boasting, and then looked at Mu Qiu with a faint smile on his face. In his opinion, the human man in front of him who could kill the two-headed demon lion with one blow was definitely not a simple person. After enduring for a moment, the goat steward finally couldn't bear the young master's bragging and interrupted. I wonder which force Master Mu represents when he attends the night banquet. The royal marriage was a sensational event in the entire Yonjai dynasty, not to mention that the marriage was between two owl kings. Naturally, this night banquet was also extremely grand, so everyone from all regions including the 12 owl kings were invited. Princes. Mu Qiu was getting excited when she heard the old housekeeper's question. She turned her head with a smile and said meaningfully, "Me? I'm not going to a wedding, I'm just going to meet an old friend." Wedding? The goat steward was a little confused about Mu Qiu's choice of words. A royal marriage was more than just a wedding. Old friend. The goat butler was very thoughtful, and those who could attend the royal banquet were all noble lords and generals. He immediately thought that Mu Qiu's identity was not simple. Rog, who has an informal personality, obviously didn't think too much and immediately patted his chest and promised. "Don't worry, I will take care of whoever you want to find when we get to Wangcheng, brother Mu." Mu Qiu smiled and shook her head, and said with deep meaning, "I'm afraid it's not that easy to find my old friend. WWW." As he said this, Mu Qiu's eyes suddenly flashed with light. "Besides, it seems that you should still deal with the current trouble." As soon as Mu Qiu finished speaking, something unexpected happened. Boom! The ground in front of the motorcade suddenly collapsed and cracked, and huge black centipedes snaked out from the ground, directly blocking the road ahead of the motorcade. Even the carriage Mu Qiu and others were in overturned due to huge bumps. More and more giant centipedes emerged from the ground. The expressions of the guards behind them changed. "Yes, it's the abyss centipede, why did it appear here? With so many abyss centipedes, even the 9th level demon general is no match for them. Run, run." These guards seemed to have some understanding of these giant centipedes. After seeing more and more centipedes, their expressions trembled. In the next second, they dropped their armor and took off their armor and ran away into the distance. When one of the orcs passed by the goat steward, he couldn't help but say, This escort is too dangerous, you should find someone else." After saying that, the orc fled quickly, and in the blink of an eye, only a few people were left in the team of dozens of people. This seemingly fierce escort team was actually hired by the goat steward. "Damn it, you collected so many magic crystals from me, and you just ran away." Seeing all the guards around him running away, Rog turned red with anger and cursed. "Master, this road is too dangerous, let's go another way." The goat steward looked at the giant centipede several meters long in front of him and spoke out words of comfort. But Rog rejected the suggestion of the goat steward directly, and said sternly, "How can my mountain cat tribe be afraid of a few stink bugs? Come with me and kill them." After saying that, Rog raised the heavy sword on his back without hesitation, and leaped into the swarm of insects in front. After hearing the words, several bearded orcs behind him also rushed up, and it seemed that they were also members of the mountain cat lineage. The goat steward sighed helplessly and said to Mu Qiu beside him, "I'm sorry to make you laugh." Mu Qiu shook his head, but at this time he had already set his sights on the battlefield in front. When Mu Qiu's eyes stayed on the black iron heavy sword in Rog's hand, a smile appeared on his face. "I didn't expect to meet an old friend here."